Greetings and welcome to Dirty Shoes. I am your fellow sojourner, Chris, back with another installment, and I am so excited. I'm excited for two reasons. Number one, I am on travel with my wife. We are in Eastern Tennessee. As you can see in the background, I am not in the Dirty Shoes Command Center. I am on travel. We're having a great time here in Eastern Tennessee, getting some just personal and spiritual development. And it's been great. So I encourage you to do that. Travel as much as you can. Have a great time. There's so much to see and do. But with all that aside, I am ready to dive in. This is a conversation that has been 30 years in the making. And when you have a great American, when you can reach out to an old college colleague after 30 years out of the blue and say, "Hey, I'm doing this podcast thing. Can you help me out?" And she has been just so gracious enough to do that. I am really excited to have this conversation with Colonel Kimberly Johnson. We're going to refer to her as Kimberly today because some of you may not understand the whole Colonel thing, but I'm looking forward to this conversation. We talked a little bit. First of all, how you doing, Kimberly?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, thank you so much for being on board with us today. I'm so excited about learning as much as I can from you today. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. By way of introduction for everyone who may be listening or watching us, I mentioned her in passing during my last installment. I was talking about someone I was in school with who just always had just a terrific mindset, always very positive. As we were going through our training, we were in the same ROTC unit together. And I just remember she was always smiling, always had a great attitude. And you just have no idea sometimes how just seeing that over the years can carry you through without the other person even knowing it. So I've had all these moments over the years where I've had these "what would Kimberly do" moments where I wanted to kind of slack off, go at half speed, or just complain. And I would just see her, that radiant smile that lights up a room like, "Okay, get it together, Chris. If Kimberly can do it, you can do it." So I'm excited about having that discussion with you today. I think I'll dive right in. Why don't we start with a little bit of background? Maybe life after Tulane. We graduated from the same college as undergrads, but where did life take you after that?
Well, life took me to Hawaii. That was my first duty station. So, yeah, so the Marine Corps did it right. I always joked. I actually put down that I wanted to go to the West Coast, but I'm sure my monitor looked at it and said, "You came from the West Coast. Okay, so we'll send you to the farthest West Coast possible in the United States." And then, of course, I joked that they, hooked me in. Okay, first duty station, Hawaii. Keep me on for a couple more years. I'm rolling. Um, but and then I did get to the West Coast. Actually, I did get back to my home town, Carlsbad, California, Oceanside, Camp Pendleton. But
Wow.
then I won't bore you with my entire career, but I ended up making it 26 years. And I can't
Amazing.
say that it went by in a blink. Um, the deployments and everything like that. But it was an incredible journey and career that I'm so thankful for and proud of.
That is awesome. Having done a couple of deployments myself, I could kind of imagine some of that. But for some of those folks who may be listening right now, do you feel comfortable with maybe sharing maybe some of the places you've gone, some of the places you've seen and led wherever it was in the world?
Absolutely. Well, um, of interesting note, I actually moved from my first duty station to my second duty station on September 7th of 2001. So we all know 4 days later, I was actually supposed to fly, took some leave, some vacation in between. I was supposed to fly down to report into my next duty station on September 12th. Obviously, the 11th happened, and we were all, wondering what we were going to do. I didn't have a unit to call to say, where do I go? What do I do? because the ship that I was, or the unit was a Marine Expeditionary Unit. They were still out on a ship, and so they weren't even home ported yet. And so it was a lot of uncertainty, and I had to actually report by the 13th, even though they hadn't come back home yet. So I got on a Greyhound. I was just up in Northern California, so got on a Greyhound, first time I ever got on that, and with my PCS luggage. Um,
Wow.
if anyone has seen Spaceballs, that's what I felt like. I had all this luggage and I was moving it when I had to do a transfer in LA, and just hoping someone didn't take the bag that I just put down on the other end, and running back and forth. But yeah, it was. With that said, though, in 2002, I like to say that I got to experience one of the last traditional West Coast, West Pacific deployments. So we stop in Hawaii, then of course we get something. Let's see, Singapore. Where else did we go? We did stop in Darwin, Australia. We went off the coast of Djibouti. We did go into. I took a helicopter in Djibouti before it became a complete Camp Lemonnier. That was the future, but it was just a very modest location at that time. But then after that, all the deployments were really to Iraq after that. So, but I got to enjoy being on a ship, and I can say I absolutely did enjoy it. Partially because I knew it wasn't my life either. It wasn't going to be
Touche.
6 years of which ship am I on. So I enjoyed it for the short time that I was able to live it.
You've already given me so much I want to try to navigate through, because I really, a lot of the conversation I want to have with you really centers around that the right mindset, whatever you're faced with, good or bad, right? Um, Whether the day is challenging, or that a season is challenging, or whether everything's smooth sailing, is having the right mindset. Let's talk about that Greyhound journey, right? Because that may be something that, right? Because that may be something that some people can relate to, and then we'll kind of build from there. So I, I'm sitting there as you're talking about like a PCS move by Greyhound. Oh my God. Because I'm remembering all the stuff. There's so much. So if you're listening, imagine trying to move a significant portion of your personal belongings from your house just by a Greyhound. If you can picture yourself, all the stuff in your closet. Try to picture your stuff in your closet, packing it into some bags, humping it alone by Greyhound. But you've got a mission. You have someplace to be. What were you kind of thinking about during that moment? And we'll just start with something as simple as that, and build into some of the meatier stuff.
Well, I think that experience had a lot of emotion in there, because obviously it was right after September 11th. And, so the entire nation, the entire world, there was this uncertainty, this quiet. Obviously, planes weren't flying. So part of that, then add exactly the stress, because every move, anyone who's ever moved, whether it's military or not, it's a stressful, emotional event. I think even therapists and everything, they talk about, death, move, let's see, loss of a loved one. Those are all significant emotional events in your lifetime. But how many moves do we do? So, and that was technically, I would argue, my first move. Yes, it was technically the second, because going out to Hawaii, but there's so much positive emotion with that. Now I'm going with, okay, I know what it feels like. Let me put all my stuff into my bags. And I would also like to point out, because this was 2001, we didn't have all the fancy luggage with wheels back then. So now just add that into it. I got big huge duffels on my shoulder. And because I happened to be up in Northern California, I was coming back with wine, which back before 2001 you could carry nice 3-pack 6-pack of wine and put it up in the overhead. So I was definitely challenged on how much luggage I had. But it was it was a suggestion at the time for me to take the Greyhound Vice, getting a rental car, which was it was easy, except for the one transfer that I had, just getting from going into LA, a major hub, as most major cities, when anything, whether it's a train or a bus, they've got a major station. Switching to another bus, yeah, I was under there and going back and forth several times, moving all my stuff. And then again, seriously hoping that someone didn't take it as I'm, adding to it, walking away, they take away from it. But it went smoothly. It did. But it was definitely a 12-hour journey that, was a lot of unknown, really.
How was it? Because in life you deal with, excuse me, you deal with various transitions. Whether you're in the military or not, sometimes you may get a new job assignment or you know uh, just a life change, and you show up that first day at work. What was that the first day? We know what this time frame was. 9/11. What was that first day of work, or that first week of work, that first month of work like?
Honestly, it was, I don't have a full, it's not a sharp memory, but I feel like it was, we were all in the same boat of unknown. So it wasn't I wasn't trying to, let's say, catch a train that's rolling, at 5 miles per hour, and I got to run, try to get on it and, keep up with everybody. It was, we all just were kind of not standing around, but we were looking at, okay, well, you're new, got it. Well, we're having to unload the ship, so there were certain things that were happening, that were not mechanical, but it was very, we all knew what needed to get done, and there was no pressing, hey, we're turning around and going back out, because that didn't happen until 2003 in all reality. Um, so but the question was, are we, what are we doing, so it was probably my most unique PCS experience, because the analogy that I used before, as far as the train rolling and you're just trying to catch up and jump on, is pretty much every other PCS that I've done, because you're trying to figure out, oh, we're middle of that exercise, oh, we just started on this, we've only had one meeting, but so you can jump on in and you're still sitting in there going, okay, you only had one meeting, but I'm still trying to figure out what you're talking about, right? Just because everything's rolling, you just jump in and figure it out as you go. This one, nobody knew. So I think it was unique, but I don't think it was difficult. I guess
Mhm.
emotionally it was difficult, but not from a, I'm the new guy, what are we doing perspective.
Gotcha. A couple of other, you mentioned a couple of assignments. Now again, I'm speaking to her as a former service member, who was I was still serving during that time as well. So for those that are listening, I'm going to try to make these questions as simple as I can. But you mentioned a couple of assignments that really struck home with me. You mentioned, I believe, Iraq, and you mentioned Djibouti. Now, on the Navy side, we're kind of watching that from where I was. Um, that is I can imagine, a very unique assignment. Um, Talk about kind of navigating, in terms of how, as a Marine, you do business as a Marine Corps officer, maybe how you do business in Iraq versus how business may have been conducted in Djibouti, and maybe standing that up. Did you see much of a difference in terms of maybe the leadership, the logistical, or the personal adjustments you had to make, while you're serving and working in those capacities?
Well, it's interesting because while there are things that I did as it is a administrative officer, basically, like, I like to tell people that I was the equivalent of HR in the civilian corporate world. It is and it isn't. There are other things that we do, of course, and there are other things that we don't do that civilians do, in that sector. But deployed administrative duties, we take on several others, which I actually like to talk about this the most, because mail, even though that is a logistical requirement, it falls under the umbrella of administrative duties. And I'll tell you, in Iraq, in that this is I'm skipping almost to 2004, 2005, that deployment, where we were in country for basically 9 months. And there were points, and this is also, if you go back, we were in Najaf, and there were quite a few things happening at that time, with Dada al-Sadr, and it was we had firefights. So of course, what are we looking for? We're looking for ammunition reloads. We're obviously, our food and our water reloads, all that stuff. What gets pushed to the side? Mail, packages. And especially with, now we're heading, middle of 2000s, we're email. Almost everybody can communicate by email, so we're not getting letters. So what, letters still of course flow, but what is the biggest part? People are sending care packages, right? Excuse me, my turn. And I remember reminding people, leadership, that we need to figure out how to get in the mail, because what is that going to do? It directly affects morale. And that was it. And I remember people coming to me saying, hey, my mom, my girlfriend, my brother said that they sent a package 6 weeks ago. Where is it? And obviously, when you're in the thick of things and there are bullets flying overhead, ammunition needs to be the priority. But there's a certain point where you need to start putting in, because they came in these big yellow bags. They would just tie them all up, throw them in there, because that's easier to move than, individual boxes, right? And I'd be like, you got to get a couple of bags on every helicopter to come in, type of thing. So, just that little piece of home, even during a firefight, a skirmish, a battle, you need to get that mail out there, because that's the morale. That's that, especially those who are on the ground, they're not checking their email. So they're not getting that little bit of home, and you need to get that small package out to them. So, that is something that I was responsible for. We worked through, and I think that was meaningful, right? We talk about the impact of personal fortitude and the ability to continue, right?
You I kind of want to pause right there, because it's hidden pretty close to home. Uh, right there. You're right. You're 100% correct. Because by that point, I know I was beginning to transition out of the military. So now I'm kind of seeing it from a civilian standpoint, and what you just talked about, that meant something here stateside as well. That meant something at home, because we're all kind of watching how things are going, or at least how it's being presented to us in the news. All the concern is about what's happening operationally, what's happening with the folks on the front line. And so that morale piece meant a lot for us here stateside. It's meaning a lot, because we really care about what's happening um, overseas at that point. Um, Share a little bit more. Are there any particular we're going in a direction I hadn't. I apologize to my audience. Uh, are there any particular stories or anecdotes you have in terms of, you mentioned that the big word there is morale, because that was the big word here stateside as well. The morale of the nation. We couldn't even imagine what was going um, on the front lines. Um, can you talk a little, any particular anecdotes you have from trying to navigate that, maybe keep morale up in your own unit?
Well, this is something small. I did a request for my mother in a care package. And I was reaching back to true childhood days in the hot summers in Minnesota. Otter Pops. They're basically the popsicles in the plastic tubes. So they're You buy them and they're completely unfrozen. You get them like in a big box of 100. I sent my mom on a wild goose chase looking for otter pops. She sent them because this, we didn't have permanent structures at this point in southern Iraq, but we did have, wooden floors with tents and electricity. So every large tent had a refrigerator and freezer. So once I saw that, I was like, Mom, and she was able to find them, sent me a box of otter pops, 100 of them. I'd throw them in the freezer, and man, I treated myself after, and a couple of the other Marines that we ran with at noon. I was on the midnight shift for much of it. So it was midnight to noon. We get off, go eat lunch, then go run. And by the way, I'd like to say this: we started this routine for some crazy reason in the middle of summer. By November, it was amazing. Noontime, it was perfect. Then I would share an otter pop after that run. It was just again that little thing was so amazing, and I don't care, gender. It was a male staff sergeant that was like, oh, it's like, ooh, which one do you want, the purple or the red? And so it
You're
brought a
talking
little bit
about a bit of heaven. It's heaven.
exactly.
See what I mean? That's why I waited 30 years to have this conversation. For that right there, for the otter pop. That's it. It was all worth it. Oh my gosh. Um, I lost my train of thought already. Mindset has to be everything, right? Because you're handling again, many of us listening may not be able to track the full scale, the full scope of what's going on or what's happening here. But I have to imagine the right attitude, the right mindset had to be everything, especially when you're in leadership. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of maybe what your routine was, or maybe some tools in the toolkit that you had to kind of both for yourself as well as for those in your charge, how you how that right mindset, that right attitude kind of made the difference from day to day.
And I'll take it out of Iraq too and kind of roll it all into my 26 years. What I tried to do personally is be myself. I never tried to be someone else, express something that I didn't believe. I mean, one of our favorite sayings in the service, period, doesn't matter which branch, is fake it till you make it, right? Now, sometimes that works, but I absolutely hate it when people apply that to leadership though, because there's nothing easier for junior people to see right through fake leadership, right? And I've really tried to hold myself to that and be who I am. So that means also maybe falling out of having the best mindset. But I think sometimes then you go, junior people say, wow, she's just as miserable as we are. It's not, there's some humility in that of not appearing to be a perfect leader or always be in the perfect mood and everything. So I've tried to apply that. Now, of course, I take in leadership when I see something that's good, right? I want to incorporate it, but I don't mirror it in the sense of, well, that's not who I am, but I'm trying to be that. So I guess that's kind of my mindset, my attitude. And of course, it's evolved over the years. I think there are many of us who say, well, yeah, when I was younger, a little more immature, a little shorter temper, all those things that go into it of, wisdom, right? Wisdom, time, experience that help you get through that. But I just tried to be me. I tried to be me, and in the how I handled things. And again, it wasn't always in a positive manner, but I also learned, okay, well, maybe this is a better way. And I did a lot of internal dialogue and tearing it apart and going, what could I have done better? That wasn't right. And if I was short, I would apologize, because I think, again, that's me being genuine. It's me going, hey, I recognize that that was inappropriate, incorrect, or whatever, and I apologize. So, like, my mindset, my attitude is, no one's perfect, but you have to recognize it. Um, and I just try to be me, and I think that resonated more so than with people than me trying to be somebody that I wasn't.
That's amazing. I again, that was okay. I have something to compete with the Otter Pop now. That was worth 30 years. And I could kind of see that. We were sharing when we talked on the phone this past week, just kind of setting up for this, and I was sharing with you, just remembering. I never remembered you. Not just being a go-getter, and so again, every now, I don't know why, over 30 years, whether it was during my military time or when I was in corporate America, or even now where I'm serving, just your face would pop into my mind. I'm like, okay, get it together, stop whining, let's go. But I do kind of feel like that. You almost seem like that even when we were in college, just a very genuine person. So I respect that tremendously, and I'm learning a lot taking that in. You really gave me some nuggets, because when I get back to work on Monday, there's some there's some things where that piece of wisdom will serve me well. So I'm grateful for that. Mentorship. Uh, I'm excited about talking a little bit about that. We were speaking. I think you recently came back from travel, um, and you had mentored someone. I guess a colleague or dear friend had just been promoted to lieutenant colonel, and she had been you had mentored her. And so I made the comment, and I meant it. We both understood that this is very high level mentorship at this level. Can you kind of talk about? Uh, has that been kind of an evolution for you, from the time when from the time you got your commission to now, where you're mentoring at an extremely high level? Can you talk a little bit about that evolution of that progression?
Absolutely. And what's interesting about it is, excuse me, the person you're speaking of, we have known each other 18 years, just about. Um, her entire almost her entire career. So I was her platoon commander at officer candidate school. And so she has many stories, some of which I remember, others I don't, but okay, I'm not denying it sounds like me. Um, and as much as I gave her a hard time there, I did. But she came out on the other end, and is doing amazing things. And for some reason, again, even with giving her a hard time and not letting her skate through, um, something about it made her keep in touch with me. And I really feel like I've been her mentor since she was a lieutenant. And so our relationship had changed. First I was only a captain in '03 at the time, but then here, progressing almost 18 years of that relationship. And I think our conversations, what is that evolution, right? So as a captain, I'm just helping her navigate her first duty station, her responsibilities as a second lieutenant, and hearing her stories of her young Marines doing things and how to handle it, right? To I'll add one in here, and after she got married, and this was only, oh gosh, I think it was 2017 when she got married, and she was back. She's a reservist. She did 4 years and then went into the reserves and got to her new unit, newly married, and she found out she was pregnant. And she called me, and she was in tears. Why was she in tears? She was in tears because she felt she was letting down the Marine Corps, because she got into this unit. They're going to be deploying. And, we know how it looks, women who can't, I mean, she's just sobbing. And I stopped her and I said, first of all, congratulations. You know, and it was, what? Like, congratulations. This is amazing. And I changed it in that second of like, no, this is amazing. Forget the Marine Corps. They'll understand. You're also not the first woman to get pregnant, but she was so focused on her responsibilities, the expectations, that she couldn't even enjoy the news of being pregnant. And to me, that was so almost disheartening, right? Because you go, okay, guess what? Marine Corps will keep on trucking. You need to focus on you, and this is a wonderful thing. And and it's like, but I think she also um exemplifies so many people, male or female, when there's something personal in their life, like, yeah, well, can't do that right now because I've got this requirement, my job to do, all these things, and we forget about family, the things that are closest to us, and that's actually what matters more. Um and I think also from a mentorship perspective, the because you do say high level, I think what makes it higher level is the conversations, the subject matter. You go from second lieutenant, you're talking about, oh, your sergeant, your staff sergeant, your staff NCOIC that's working for you, to life. That was, 2017. So here, 11 years after I'd met her, and maneuvering through being late 20s, 30s, right? Same thing. It's all these other, and by the way, I'd like to point out that she just took command as lieutenant colonel, '05 command. So like, it's like,
Come
and
on.
so those are our conversations, right? It's not necessarily higher level mentorship. It just evolves with where the mentee is, honestly, I think.
That is huge. And if I could just take a moment, if you're listening right now, you did not stumble across this by accident. That right there was worth it. You have someone that is mentoring you or pouring into you. Um, that's worth its weight in gold. Continue to treasure that. Um, Value that, both if you're mentoring, but particularly if you're being mentored by someone. Continue to value that. I know you do, but treasure it for as long as it lasts. 18 years is huge. And that meant a lot to me. I learned a lot in terms of um, those conversations, because I feel that. You're right. You're absolutely right. I think I'm going to close on this, and then I'm going to try and find my wife. I told Kimberly that I was going to ask the question. I braced her for it, though. Okay. For our audience, how many running shoes have you torn through?
And Chris is asking this question because on social media, I'm constantly posting what race I'm going to, what race I've done. I think the most I've done is 3 races in a weekend: a Friday, Saturday. Oh no, that's not true, because I did the dopey. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And anyone who doesn't know that, it's a 5K, 10K, half marathon, full marathon in 4 days. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. Um, I don't think I've exceeded the 100 pairs, but it's safe to say 2 pairs a year,
Wow.
maybe a third on occasionally, but yeah.
Now, to put that in context, um, the there's me. You may see me on your screen, and you'll see Kimberly on your screen. I'm literally wearing the same pair of running shoes that I bought like 4 years ago. That's like one pair of running shoes in 4 years versus 2 to 3 pairs in a single year. That's just sad. That's just sad. I think I
is
think I'm
long
sad
though,
now.
Chris.
That running piece, because we had a great conversation about that in terms of your mindset when you're running and kind of your process or what's going on when you're running. Can you share that a little bit? Because I found that fascinating in terms of, and this may be just unique to you, I don't know, but share that with our audience in terms of like what's kind of going on with you while you're running.
Oh, anything can go through my mind. So I actually run without music unless I'm on a treadmill. But actually, I will often listen to a podcast anyway, not music. Um, Even though sometimes I do, but I traditionally run, so I let my mind just it. That is my time to think about nothing or think about everything. Conversations, preparation for a meeting, and I will have such great thoughts that I'll actually pull out my phone, go into the notes section, and write it down, as I'm typing. So if I mean, I guess some people might be texting somebody, but I'm not texting, I'm trying to jot down my thought so I don't forget it by the time I get home and I'm done with my run. That's happened quite a bit just because I like to get lost in whatever comes into my brain at the time.
Incredible. You've inspired me. I am the next walk that my wife goes on. I'm going to go on that walk with her. I'll start there. I'll start right there.
Perfect. I love it.
Let me say it. I want to say it because I enjoy saying it. For our audience, Colonel Kimberly Johnson, thank you so much. Thank you for responding to me out of the blue, cold turkey after 30 years. Thank you so much for this time of sharing with me and mentoring me. Thank you for 26 years of service to our country. That is everything. And I think the only thing I have left to say is roll, wave, roll.
Roll, wave, roll. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. And for those of you who are listening today, again, this has been the Dirty Shoes Podcast. Thank you for listening. If you've got any stories or if you want to share your mentorship, your mentoring relationship, whether you're being mentored or mentoring someone else, I'd love to hear about it. DirtyShoes02 at gmail.com. Thank you so much. Make it a great day.